Is there a place for laughter in sermons and biblical lessons? That's what we're talking about today for the second time in Tuesday Teaching Tip number 412 and part 17 of our current series, Your Voice Matters, Tips for New and Inexperienced Speakers. And it's part 2, as I say, of one we started last week. So if you haven't watched that, you might want to go back and watch that first. We're building on that one, which was called Jesus Made Them Laugh. And this week we're talking about, well, make them laugh, us, making people laugh, making people smile when we speak, when we teach and preach. We're exploring further the tip from my friend Lance Owen from last week, where he talked about adding humor to our lessons. I open a man's mouth wide with laughter so I can pour a dose of truth into it. Very effective. Humor and laughter can be for communicating important truth from God's word. The use of humor in teaching about God is legitimate. Have a look at the video last week about the teachings of Jesus, for example. Or, just to add to that, you could take the example of Elijah in 1 Kings 18 when he says, it says, at noon, Elijah mocked them, saying, "Cry aloud, surely he is a god. Either he is meditating, or he has wandered away, or he is on a journey, or perhaps he is asleep and must be awakened." 1 Kings 18:27. He's mocking. It's funny. It's tragic, the whole situation, but it's kind of funny at the same time. You also might want to have a look at Isaiah 44 and verse 15 and around that too. But today we're going to talk about the pros and cons of a good giggle, and how to develop your humor muscle in your preaching and teaching. So first, the pros and cons of a good giggle. Because like any tool, humor has its advantages and its potential drawbacks. So let's talk about those for a few minutes. The pros first, the pros of humor. Firstly, humor in a lesson increases engagement, that connection. As we've discussed before, humor can grab attention and make your lesson more interesting. Secondly, it improves retention. People often remember the stories and the funny moments more than the dry facts. Humor can help solidify truths in the mind and in the heart. Thirdly, humor builds rapport. Sharing a laugh together between you and the congregation can create a connection between you and your audience that is deeper than otherwise. Fourthly, humor reduces tension. Humor can provide a mental breather and make complex topics feel less overwhelming. And finally, humor can make you relatable. Showing your human side, especially through something like self-deprecating humor, can make you seem more approachable and more like one of the people that you're speaking to, which you are, but it can help to connect you in that way. What about some cons? Some things to be aware of. The first is we've got to be careful about the risk of offense. Humor is subjective, and what you intend as lighthearted might offend someone. I've done that more than once. Distraction. Secondly, distraction. If not used carefully, humor can detract from the main point of your lesson. The joke might be remembered, but the message forgotten. There needs to be a proper connection. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Thirdly, it can diminish seriousness. I have watched some YouTube videos from people who say there should never be any humor in lessons because this is too serious, what we're talking about. And it is true that it's possible that the seriousness of a message could be diminished by misplaced humor. In certain contexts, especially when discussing solemn or serious topics, humor can be seen to trivialize the message and might be inappropriate. Also, sometimes we've got to watch out that humor can feel forced. Trying too hard to be funny can fall flat and feel unnatural. And then we've got to be also mindful of cultural differences. What's considered funny varies significantly across cultures, so be mindful if you have a diverse audience. As an example, I remember telling a self-deprecating story against myself when visiting a congregation in the United States. I live in the UK. I told that self-deprecating story, which back home made people laugh and made a good connection with the audience. I told it in the United States and it fell completely flat. I think rather than thinking it funny that I would tell this self-deprecating story, the audience felt sorry for me, which was not the intended effect and didn't help with the lesson. Maybe it was difference between British and United States humor. Maybe it was that particular part of the United States or that particular congregation. I don't know. But I failed to recognize that there's a difference in culture. Now, having talked about the pros and cons, let's talk about developing your humor muscle. You can develop it. You can grow. You may not think of yourself as funny. You don't have to be a funny person. You can still use humor in your lessons, even if it doesn't come naturally. Like any skill, your humor capacity can be developed. Here are a few tips to help you get started. Number one, start small and safe. Keep it small and safe at the beginning. You don't need to become a stand-up comedian overnight. In fact, you don't have to become one at all. Begin with gentle, inoffensive humor, perhaps some self-deprecating jokes, or observations about common experiences. You don't have to be sophisticated. Next, observe daily life. Pay attention to the funny things that happen around you, the ironies, the absurdities. Often observational humor, which flows from the incongruities of life, is the most relatable and effective. Next, learn from other people. Notice how speakers you admire use humor. What is it that makes it work when they are funny? Is it their timing, their delivery, the type of humor they use? I've watched so many comedians for so many decades now, and I've learned so much from them. I'm never going to be as good as them, but I've learned a lot about the use of pacing and timing and such like. Learn from other people. Next, practice your delivery. Humor, like all speaking, but perhaps more than any other particular genre, humor relies on timing to be effective. It's the timing, it's how you say it. So practice telling your anecdotes, your jokes, your stories. Tell them out loud to yourself, maybe on camera to yourself, and you can watch it back to get a feel for the rhythm of what you're doing. And don't worry about getting it wrong. Sometimes your struggle to tell the joke will be as helpful to your audience as the joke itself, but do practice. Next, know your audience. What one group finds funny, another might not. So be mindful of your audience's background and sensitivities. Testing the waters with less risky humor initially can be a good strategy. And finally, in this section, connect humor to your message. Make sure it's connected to what you're talking about. The best humor isn't random. A little bit of banter here and there is fine. But in terms of planning in the humor, the best of it isn't random. It supports and enhances your message, God's word. Think about how a light-hearted remark or story can illustrate a point or make it more memorable. You go through your lesson outline, you see a point there, you think, is there some humor in there somewhere? If there is, how can you incorporate it? Connect the humor to your message. Wrapping up, Jesus and other biblical figures used humor to make deep spiritual points. They were not comedians, but they understood the value of comedic elements in their speaking. Wisely used, humor opens up hearts and minds so that biblical truth can find a smooth path to its target. Experiment with this. Be brave and note what works and what does not work. As Charles Spurgeon, the famous old preacher, said, "It is less a crime to cause a momentary laughter than a half hour's profound slumber." Let's not cause slumber. Let's use the tool of humor to help people to have an open heart and an open mind to God's truth. So, how has this episode and the previous one shaped your thinking about the appropriateness of humor in your sermons and other biblical lessons? What changes will you make in this area as you progress on your speaking journey? So please add your comment on this week's topic. We learn best when we learn in community, so leave it where we can see it. By the way, do consider joining us for AIM UK and Ireland. Our current module is New Testament Survey. You can find the details on the website. If you have any questions about the Bible, drop them my way, malcolm@malcolmcox.org. If you'd like a free copy of my book on spiritual disciplines, then sign up for my newsletter at the website malcolmcox.org. Please pass the link on to anybody you think might benefit from it. Hit the subscribe and notification button and bell, and let me know all of your thoughts on this topic. And remember, at all times, to keep calm and carry on teaching. Take care and God bless.